Well, welcome everyone to today's episode of TMI Advice You Didn't Want. Today, we're diving into an interesting conversation. We're going to be talking about intuition. And when you know that your intuition is telling you to do something, telling you to move forward, and when maybe it might be something else. So, this is a really big topic, and we're going to try and tackle this today. So, in case we haven't met, my name is Karen. I'm one of the co hosts here.
And my name is Ashley.
And this honestly is like, I don't know about you, but this is one of those topics that sometimes I even get befuddled with my intuition. And when am I getting a nudge from something to move forward? And when am I feeling like, oh no, wait a minute, like time out. That's not actually my intuition. That's actually me feeling dysregulated and I'm in a state of survival, and I feel like something has to get done right now. And I feel like a lot of times for me, I don't know about you, Ashley, but a lot of times when I find myself in a state of, okay, something needs to get done right now, I need to pause and actually spend time with myself first before I take step forward. Because sometimes when I do that pause, I can actually distinguish between, wait a minute, I was trying to push and force and make something happen because I'm in a state of overwhelm or just dysregulation in general. And so when I take that pause, I can help my body get back into a state of flow, which then helps me know which direction I need to go with something. So I don't know if that's how it is work for you, but
Yeah, and it doesn't even always have to be like dysregulated processes. For me, like we were talking earlier, like as a Pisces dreamer, I will dream up these wonderful ideas and I'm like, oh, I could make it happen. And yes, like we are able to create our future and create our reality, but there's other players. And that's
mhm,
something that my mentor talks about a lot is that yes, you can create your own reality, but there are other people playing the game too.
mhm.
And so if it's a situation like a business or something like that, or in my situation, like co-parenting, there's other people playing a part.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's a little bit more tricky
Mhm.
to really make something happen and create that because it has to be for the highest good of the whole. And there might be lessons that have to play out for other people. And so there's always like a route that's in your highest good, but then there's the highest good for everyone too. And so there's been times where it's like, oh, I would love this to happen because it would be my best idea, but it's not the group.
Yeah.
What's in the group, not even necessarily the group's highest good, but it's not what the all the players are trying to have happen, right?
Mhm.
So it might be what everyone's highest good may be, but there's people pushing back on it because we self-sabotage and all of those kind of things. And so that's where you have to think like, so if I was to create a situation that would be for my highest good because I want to, that might not be my intuition saying, hey, this is your next step. That's just me being like, this is what I want right now. Um, and eventually we can create those scenarios,
Mhm.
but it's not a pull of intuition. It's a pull of us, because we are creators forcing something to happen.
Yeah, yeah. And what you just said, I feel like it perfectly illustrates because I left a business about a month ago, right? And what you just said perfectly illustrates what was going on in that business where it was like part of me was wanting it to work so badly because it was a great idea and I was part of creating it. But the other part of me was like, wait a second, like this isn't in my highest good because I'm getting dysregulated by situations that I don't need to be dysregulated in. And so for me, what I had to do at the end of the day was to take a pause. Like I still feel like it comes back to that, take a pause and actually like have some time with myself and really ask myself what I wanted. And then look at the situation and ask myself, is this really like I've been in this situation for, I'd been in that business for over a year. And I had to ask myself some hard questions of, is this situation showing any signs, or has there been any growth in the direction I want it to go? And the answer was overwhelmingly no.
Yeah.
And so I had to look at that and just go, this isn't really the place for me to grow in my highest good. And so when I took a moment, paused, and kind of like assessed how I felt about the whole situation, I'm like, this is just creating more dysregulation for me. And it's just not healthy at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So, but one thing that I know, when I know when it's my intuition, like that situation that I just talked about, there was a lot of logic that went into it. But in a situation where I know it's my intuition, I keep having synchronicities about that thing that maybe's been talked about, or the thing that I think I want to do. I keep having synchronicities over and over until I actually do it, right? So an example of this, I can't even believe this happened, because it was like, oh my God. And I'm getting chills just thinking about it, because this was meant for me. Okay. So I was watching a training that was done, and the person doing the training, actually, it was Dr. Joe Dispenza. He was talking about this book, The Afterlife of Billy Fingers. And I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. Like, he's explaining it a little bit. He doesn't go into super detail of it, but I'm like, that sounds interesting. Like, that's a book that I would definitely check out just from the name of the title. And so after getting off that call, I went to Amazon immediately, and I was like, what's going on with this book? Like, I need to know a little bit about this book. So I looked it up. I looked around the preface, and I'm like, that sounds really interesting, but I didn't buy it right away. Right. Like, I was like, I don't need to spend money on this right now. I'm currently reading a book. It doesn't really make sense for me to buy this book and have it sit in my backlog. So I just kind of like let it go. Right. That afternoon. Okay. I kid you not. That afternoon, somebody was like, oh my God, I started reading this book and I just can't stop. Like, it is so good. And I was like, what's the book? And they said, The Afterlife of Billy Fingers. And I'm like, stop it right now. And so I know, like, after having situations like that happen in my life over and over again, I know that I would have kept having me point back to that book, like, I got to get this book over and over, had I not just done it that day. So I didn't drag out the inevitable. I just went, okay, I'm just going to go buy the book. Like, I'm going to go get it. I know that I'm supposed to read it. And when I started reading that book, I kid you not, I have never had a book do this before to me. I constantly, as I'm reading the book, chills up and down my spine the whole time. And it could be just like a normal thing that the author is saying, but it's like chills the whole time up and down my spine. And I'm like, there's something really big in this book. And yes, there's a lot of big pointings and teachings in the book. If you haven't read the book, you should absolutely highly freaking recommend. But it's one of those things that I know my intuition brought me here for a reason. And so there's something to learn, whether it's just me having that movement of energy. That could be all that it was that I needed. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I know there's a lot that pointed to this. And that for me is a total intuitive, like, this you have to do. Like, this is a yes, please. So for me, I like looking at synchronicities in my life and going, that's the direction I need to go. That makes the most sense out of everything. So,
Yeah, I agree. And I think those chills too are like when people do energy work, they talk about like the goosebumps, the
yeah.
chills, or like the gurgling in the belly, that kind of thing. So there's lots of those kind of like bodily aspects that help as well. Also, I think it's practice, like getting in tune with yourself
Yeah.
and practicing, and it can be the big things and little things, but the more that you do, the stronger those muscles get, and so
Mhm.
then it's an easier way to determine it
Yeah, for
as well.
sure. Yeah. And like you said, it's kind of like muscle memory. That's the reason I knew whenever I heard it again later in the day, I was like, this is the same thing. I need to get this. So
Yeah.
I know like when I go against that urge, things are not going to feel as fun. They're not going to be as awesome as if I go with the urge that I initially felt.
Yeah.
So, but as I mentioned earlier, sometimes my thought of, oh, this is my intuition can get muddled by how regulated my body is too.
Yeah.
Because I could get really excited about something, but if I'm dysregulated, that thing is probably not the thing that I need to go towards.
Yeah.
So that's the reason for me that I'm always like, okay, time to pause, time to chill. And that's the biggest thing that I did once I left that business that I left about a month ago. I took some time and I paused and I really let my body completely regulate back to normal. Like I literally would say to myself before sleep, that I started this maybe a week ago. I would say to myself, I'm safe, because I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would feel unsafe because my body had been in such a state. It was in this rolling state of, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do, and all of that to-do planning was setting me off and it was making me feel unsafe in my body. And
Yeah.
so just the act of me saying to myself, I'm safe. I can now sleep through the night, which is like a big thing because for me, honestly, I probably should have picked up on this earlier, but I didn't. For the entire year and a half that I was with that other business, I really struggled to sleep. There
Yeah.
was a feeling of I'm not safe because I have all these things to do and I had piled up all these things. And so I was in this state of I'm just not safe. And
Mhm.
so now I've gotten myself back into this regulation where I can now just say to myself, I'm safe. And now I
Mhm.
can sleep through the night, which is huge
Yeah.
because I mean, anybody that has insomnia, I used to be the worst insomniac. Like I used to never sleep ever. So for me to not sleep this past year and a half was like kind of troubling because I was like, well, what do I need to do differently? And really, at the end of the day, it was right staring in my face, but I wasn't ready to make that change. I wasn't ready to make the jump yet because I'm like, well, maybe it could get better. I don't know. Let me try all these things. And I did. I tried a lot of things. And finally, it was like, it's time to just go with what your body is telling you.
Yeah.
And it's time to let go of things that just aren't serving me. So it can be, it's a very interesting journey that we have when we're listening to ourselves and we're listening to our intuition and moving with our body instead of against it. Because I think our body, this is my opinion, and I think a lot of people would agree with me, our body is one of the best tools we have to get connected with our intuition and what we're actually feeling, experiencing, what's our next step. I know,
Mhm.
like, Ashley, you just said talking about like the full body chills. I know when something's right because I get full body chills and I just
Yeah.
felt full body chills right now as I'm saying that. Like I know that's how my body tells me this is the direction. What you're saying is on point. What you're doing is on point. I get the full body chills.
Yeah.
And like you talk about the stomach gurgles, I don't really get stomach gurgles, but it is like full on, like from my root chakra all the way to the top of my head, my hair stands on end. Like it is, that's when I know
Mhm.
this is the direction I need to continue to move forward in.
Yeah. No, I agree with you completely. And I think that's kind of like the whole idea is like knowing yourself, knowing what you want enough, but also knowing that what you want may not always be best. But if you know yourself enough, you won't get misled by that.
Yeah.
And I know we've talked a little bit before about Kevin Trudeau, and he
Mm-hmm.
talks a lot about how you can manifest anything that you want, no matter the players, no matter any of those things, because there's always going to be more powerful people. So if you become the most powerful person out of all the players, you will manifest it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not as fast as you like, but you can. But there's a really cool thing of allowing the universe to give you the best instead of you deciding the best. And that's where I think having that really powerful intuition comes in, because you're not ever getting pulled by your wants and what you think is best. You're allowing the intuition of the universe to really guide you. So.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And as Ashley was mentioning Kevin Trudeau, like if you guys haven't listened to Kevin Trudeau's Your Wish is Your Command, you got to pick it up, because if you want to learn how to manifest, there's two people I always suggest to people. I'm like, listen, if you want to know how to manifest anything in your life, like, and know like that you're purposefully manifesting, it's Kevin Trudeau and Dr. Joe Dispenza. Those are my go-tos, because they know what they're talking about. So, but like with Your Wish is Your Command, like, yeah, it really is realizing that you can be the most powerful person in the room when it comes to creating what you want to create. But it's also, like you said, going with what's in my highest good. What does the universe actually want for me? And so one thing that I started doing when things don't necessarily go the way that I anticipate, because it happens, right? Like things can happen and you're like, well, how did I get here? What in the world is this? I love the phrase, it's always working in my highest good. I love that phrase. If I am feeling like, oh my God, what do I do next? I don't even know. How did I get here? I remind myself all the time, it's always working out for me. This is the way that it is supposed to be, because I don't know what's over this hill. I don't know what's over this hump. And I say this all the time too. It's just part of the process. I just chose this to be part of my process. And I'm going to give a little giveaway from the Afterlife of Billy Fingers. But in that book, Billy Fingers, he talks about, he's the guy that died and he comes back to his sister and speaks through his sister. But he talks about how he is able to look at like a screenplay of his entire life, and he can see all the what ifs that could have happened. He can see what he actually did, and he can go down all the different roads. And one thing that he said, and I'm getting chills as I'm talking about this, is he's like, it could go anyway. It doesn't matter if I had gone down the what ifs or the other roads. This is what I did, but it wouldn't matter if I had gone down those other what ifs, because I would still have to experience certain lessons and understand those certain lessons. So he's like, regret is silly, because like it's all just a part of the process. No matter what you choose, it's still part of your process. It's still part of what you chose, your soul chose to learn on this earth, regardless of what your outer world looks like. It's still going to be a part of your process in what you want to learn and how you want to grow. Whether, like for me, whether I decided to stay in that business that I left or not, it would still be a part of my process. I could go down all the what ifs all day, and I believe at the end of my life I'll probably have the same screenplay in front of me where I could go down the road of the what if with that, right? I could. But there would be the same learnings, the same experiences, regardless of what thing I chose along the way, because it's just part of my process at the end of the day. So that's the reason for me. I'm like, damn, there's no right, wrong, good, bad. It just is. This is just what you chose to play out on your current dimensional screen that you're looking at right now in your life.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's the hard part, is like having that presence to accept all of that and know all of that. And I think even like with my kids, like having them understand that we choose everything. So they'll often be like, oh, well, this person told me to, or oh, well, this person was invited to do this, so it's not their fault. And it's like, just because you're told, just because you're invited, just because someone, like, there's a rule in the school. Like the one time my daughter challenged a rule in the school, which I think I talked about on the last podcast. I was proud of her, because you're challenging and you're not just following. And so I think that's really important too, to know that you are creating what you have, and whether you're passively doing it or actively doing it. And that's where you can allow your intuition to really take over, but it's not allowing life to just passively happen to you either. There's a difference between those two things too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Because, like, I mean, one thing that's really important too when it comes to life and manifestation is yes, there is still an action, and I'm putting air quotes around action when it comes to manifestation or whatever it is that you intend to create or where your intuition is pointing you. There's still an action that you need to do, whether that action is just you making the firm intention that you're done with something or that you want to do something or that your focus is in this direction. You might not even have to take a step forward. You might not even have to do anything in the physical world. It could just be that you make that intention that this is the direction you want to go now, and things will just manifest the way that you are intending. Now, I do think that doing that requires you to have a real handle on your heart and brain coherence. In order for that kind of thing to happen, your heart and your brain have to be in sync and in step. Otherwise, it's probably not going to be like I intend to do this, and then it just suddenly happens. Like, I got that caveat there, but that can be a possibility, right? So, until you get to that point, a lot of times we do have to take a physical step forward and do something in the physical world. And as we start to, and I know this for myself, I see this with myself too. This is what's really exciting about my manifestation journey and how my intuition works and how I've started to create an intent. And then even without doing a physical action, just the intention alone has started to create massive ripples in my life, which makes it really exciting to see what could happen in my reality, because I've spent so much time on myself. I've spent so much time regulating my nervous system, making sure that my heart and brain are in sync, in step, and I'm seeing what my intuitive nudges are, and I'm walking towards that, whether in a physical or in a mind intention state. I'm creating from that, which makes it so fun. It just gets me so excited because I'm like, what else can I create through thought and intention alone? Just because I've spent some extra time on me focusing on that. And that's something that I feel like a lot of gurus out there don't put enough time into talking about, is that if you want to just manifest like this, you really have to spend the time and energy on yourself to get yourself there. Like, yes, it's totally possible to manifest out of thin air, but it takes some focus on yourself first, because before you get to that point, you're probably going to have to do a lot of things matter to matter. And it's going to take a little bit of time for you to start to get yourself in sync. But once you do start to get yourself in sync, it's like this ball starts rolling. So Kevin Trudeau actually, he talks about this on Your Wish is Your Command as well. And how he refers to it is that in life, we have this big ball of either positive or negative energy, right? So he talks about how if you want to decrease the time between your thought and your manifestation, you have to decrease the size of your negative ball of energy and increase the size of your positive ball of energy, right? And this can take a little bit of time. This is not something that you just wake up tomorrow morning. If you've been completely dysregulated, you haven't been focusing on this, you're probably not going to be super great at this at first. That's the reason a lot of people are like, I can't manifest. Like, I don't know how this thing works. It's because there's been so much focus on that big ball of negative energy. There's so much there that you really got to prune away the thoughts and the feelings that just aren't serving you anymore. And the more you prune away and you get that big ball of negative energy to a smaller and smaller and smaller ball of energy, and your positive ball of energy just starts growing, that's when you really start to create more manifestations around you just through thought alone. And that is really fucking exciting when you get to that point.
Yeah. And that's the hardest part too, is there's a lot of dissociation too.
Yes.
So a lot of people will fake it till they make it, because some people teach that as well. So they're not shrinking the negative ball and growing the positive ball. They're dissociating from the negative ball and faking the positive ball. And that also doesn't work for manifesting.
Mm-hmm. One thing I will say, I do, somebody asked this question. This was on a Dr. Joe Live, and I always reference him because I listen to a lot of his stuff, because for me, it really works. But somebody asked him, they're like, I am a actor, right? Like, I'm an actor, and I am worried about me being able to manifest what I want to manifest, because when I'm acting this other person, I'm acting completely dysregulated, I'm angry, or I'm frustrated or overwhelmed or whatever. I'm acting out all these negative emotions, right? Like, is that going to affect my results later? And I loved his answer, because what he said, he was like, honestly, actors and actresses can be some of the best when it comes to manifestation, because they're really good at going, I want to be a different person. And they go from one emotional state, and then they choose, nope, I want to be in this emotional state, and I want to stay here to be this person that I'm acting out, right? So it's kind of like you get yourself, it's not dissociation, but it's getting that thought and feeling in line together, and you actually think and feel the exact thing that you're going to think and feel when you are experiencing X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah.
It's a very difficult thing to explain, but one thing that I loved was hearing how he talked about that, where actors and actresses can be some of the best people at this, because they're able to act out their thoughts and feelings, and they're in sync. It's the whole like heart brain coherence, right? The brain is thinking and the heart is feeling the exact same thing. So you're moving in unison. You're creating this cohesion, this coherence together that's moving in the same direction. And at the end of the day, if you want to manifest, if you want to create, if you want to go with your intuition, moving everything together like that is what creates so many crazy, amazing things at the end of the day. So,
Yeah, no, that's so awesome.
yeah. So, but with that, I think we are going to call today's episode of TMI Advice You Didn't Want a wrap. So if you are listening to us on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe and give us a like, and let us know in the comments if you have any questions or thoughts that you want us to talk about or connect with in the future. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting host, go ahead and give us a 5-star. And once again, leave us a comment. Let us know what your thoughts are. So with that, we will chat next time on TMI Advice You Didn't Want.